So, without further ado, tonight's program, our author is a financial expert, and I'm just going to take a look at my notes because I need to get the names of the places you worked at right. I always get them mixed up.
So do I.
Well, in case you're not aware, he is a private financial wealth manager at his own boutique in New York City, and he's previously worked with Morgan Stanley, Payne Weber, and Kidder Peabody, which those names change kind of daily, don't they?
They do change, right.
Luckily for us, he's decided to take his insider knowledge of the financial industry to the page, and he wrote his first novel, debut novel, Top Producer, which, if you've checked out the reviews, is critically acclaimed. Publishers Weekly called it the gold standard of financial thrillers, and I saw it on a segment on NBC's Today Show. They picked it as one of their best fall reads. I'm just going to take a brief look at my notes because I was chuckling to myself when I wrote it. So it's a critically acclaimed, fast-paced Wall Street thriller that delves into a world of hush-hush meetings, disappearing money, mysterious deaths, and financial heroes, which of course is a world unknown to most of us, or any of us here except for you, and I was thinking probably a world unknown to the U.S. government as well, perhaps. And here to share his story with us is our author for this evening. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Norb Vonnegut.
Thank you. It's great to be here. What a great library this is, huh? This is just so nice. Here's what I thought I'd do. I thought I'd tell three stories. I'll tell you what the book's about, so I'll give you a little anecdote. And I'll tell you why I wrote the book. Explain a little bit about what I saw on Wall Street that led me to write Top Producer. And then finally, I'll tell you what it feels like to be a first-time author. And if I get off track and I forget any of the stories, prompt me, okay? Because I do that. And I would also have to say, just before getting started, I'd really like to thank Elm Street Books and Allison for coming tonight. You know, the independence plays such an important role for new authors, and I'm really starting to understand that, because the thing about independent bookstores is that the people who run these shops read the books and they know their customers. And so if you're a new author and you don't have a following, independents are a great resource. They're so helpful because they know their customers and they say, well, you know, I read this book and it's terrific and I think you should try it. And there are people like, hey Kim, there are people like Khaled Hosseini. I mean, that's how he got his start. The Kite Runner was his first book. Nobody knew who he was, and you know, the independents started promoting. So thank you. No, that's great. So what has anyone read Top Producer here? All right. I'll give you the CNN version of what the book is about, just so I can set the basis. It starts at the New England Aquarium, and a really wealthy money manager named Charlie Kellerman throws a surprise birthday party for his wife. He spares no expense. There are 500 people at the aquarium, okay? And it's a lavish, outrageous party, but it goes way bad for Charlie, who's killed in spectacular fashion, in sort of peculiar fashion, in front of these 500 people. And sure, everybody's distraught. People are bummed out because Charlie's such a good guy. And after the funeral, his wife approaches Charlie's best friend, who's his top producing stockbroker, meaning he generates lots and lots of revenues for his firm. And he's a top producing stockbroker by the name of Grover Rourke. I need to stop for a minute. When's the last time anybody outside a 50-mile radius of New York City cared about a stockbroker, right? People like Grover Rourke. He's a good guy, keeps his head down, and tries to do the right thing for his clients. You'll care about him. So the widow says to Grove, I have a problem. I have $600 in a bank account. I don't know where all of our money is. And Grove is astonished because he thinks they can't have this woman can't have lunch in New York City on $600. And so he says, let me help. And the more he helps, the more trouble he gets into. Okay? His life turns really bad really quickly. So Top Producer is a story that takes place behind Wall Street's closed doors. And it's full of an insider's intrigue, and I like to think humor. But at the end of the day, you don't have to know anything about finance because it's a story about people. And as you hit the passages on finance, if you want to burrow down and learn something about Wall Street, stick with them. If you don't like them, just zip right through because it's a story about people. Okay, so that's story number one. Why did I write this book? Okay, let's look at the headlines today, things that are happening. All right, Darien. Everybody's read about insider trading at Darien. The thing that got me in reading those stories, and continues to get me, is that there's this trader who's named after the James Bond movie Octopussy. And so this trader named Octopussy was dealing in illegal information, allegedly. I don't know that he's convicted, so I want to be careful. So he's dealing in illegal information. And what's he do? He bites a SIM card in half in one of these disposable phones after he finishes trading. Think about that. He bites a SIM card in half. And the SEC, in like the mother of all classic comments, said something like, well, you know, we have a problem in morals if somebody is biting a SIM card after they use a phone. You know, and I thought that's really interesting behavior. And today, just today, there was an article about a hedge fund founder who's based in Greenwich, and his ex-wife is suing him, invoking law that is used to prosecute mobsters. And I think that's really interesting stuff. And it's not about finance, it's about people, right? It's about the things people do. And so for years, I looked at my environment as a stockbroker. And I thought, we do really bizarre things that seem really normal in the context of being stockbrokers. I'll give you a great example of this. It didn't make its way into Top Producer, but I wished it had because it's actually a pretty good story. The thing is that always gets me is when you read Top Producer, you'll get a sense for how secretive stockbrokers are about the information that they have. And the reason is you never know when your colleagues will become your competitors because people in finance are always taking paychecks to go somewhere else. You don't know when your colleagues will be your competitors. So your friends are your enemies, your enemies are your friends, and at any one time, you know, they may be wearing a different label. But because of that, and because you build a business with clients, you live in this fear of people taking information and taking clients. There was a guy I used to work with, and he would go to these Top Producer dinners, and he would take notes on linen napkins during the dinner about things people would say, and he'd take the napkins home at night. I mean, you know, I thought, that's kind of interesting. So you get peculiar behavior, and it seems kind of normal while you're there. And the thing that I could never reconcile was this cult of secrecy when you have open plan seating, right? So like if I would go into the office, if I had a fight with my wife, everybody would know about it. Everybody would know that Mary and I are screaming at one another. So we never called one another. It wasn't a question that we had fights all the time. But you know, I didn't want everybody to know our business at home. And if somebody had a problem with their kids, or they had one of those problems like the 4-hour problem that you see on the commercials after dinner every night from the pharmaceutical company, I mean, you knew all that stuff. You knew all that stuff in this open plan environment. So the question is, you're trying to be discreet with your client's business. What do you do if you have a huge business? Now, at our high point, my team managed $10 billion. That's a lot of money. That's bigger than a lot of mutual funds. I mean, it's still serious money. I mean, but the bulk of the time, that was just during the sort of the dot-com blip, and we still managed multiple billions, but that was really the high point. So the issue that we had is that our clients all had names that people in my industry would recognize, and in many instances, they're names you would recognize. So I'll pick on a name that he was never a client. I've never met him. I've only seen him on TV, but we all know who he is, and that way I can make this point. Let's say Steven Spielberg called up. Now, what's going to happen if in this open plan environment, my assistant stands up and leans over the desk and she says, "Norb, Steven Spielberg's on line 1," and everybody else is going to stop what they're doing to hear Steven, wow, Norb, Steven, wow. This is like big stuff. So instead of my assistant standing up and saying, "Norb, Steven Spielberg's on line 1, you'd stand up and say, "Norb, Batman's on line 1. And so when Susie called from the Cape, "Hey, Norb, Wonder Woman's on line 1. And we had Green Hornet, we had Green Lantern, and we had Flash, and the system sort of broke down because everybody wanted to be Superman. But I got to tell you, when the phones got hot, it was like the Justice League of America was calling us for financial advice. I mean, and that's what we did. And as I look back at that, I think, that's just bizarre. But it made so much sense at the time, and it was kind of fun, and we had all these aliases for the clients that we worked with. And what I would say is that I thought that kind of environment created really fertile territory for good characters and a fun story. And I could do something with that. And I started writing with these characters all around me, partly as a way of a little bit of self-defense, because heading into that environment, there were always 2 TVs on at any one time. There were, CNBC and Fox Business all the time. I'd get 200 to 300 emails a day. I still get them, but from different people. and I had, in the course of 10 years, 14 bosses. I had 15 incoming lines. Okay, and at any one time, I was on the phone with one of my bosses, with the sales traders, with the analysts, you name it. I was always on the phone, and the days got away from me. I need my BlackBerry actually as a prop for the next story. But the thing is I was always on the phone. I mean, this was surgically attached to my hip, and I started writing because I found it a way to develop a separate piece, because I'd get up at 5 in the morning and I'd write until 7 before going into the office. And that was great because it was time for me. I didn't worry about emails, I didn't worry about the phone calls. I was able to decompress. And one of the unintended consequences of that is I was able to focus at the office better when Batman or Wonder Woman or whoever called up. And so I liked writing just as an escape, as downtime. It made me better at my job. So I wrote this book, and I finished it took a couple of years. My wife called me a hermit with a laptop, and this year we headed off on September 15 to Australia. And so this is where I tell you what it feels like to be a first-time author. All right. to set the stage for this, you have to understand, I spent 20 years in financial services. And over 20 years, I learned one thing. Do not talk to the press. They're bad people. There's nothing good that will happen. You will be fired. Everything will go wrong, wrong, wrong. If the press calls, hang up. If you even see a person who looks like they're from the press cross the street, don't talk to them. So, all of a sudden, I'm in this career where I have to talk to the press in order for people to learn about my book, Top Producer. And it's like, oh no, what do I do? I'm not trained. I've never done this. I mean, do these people have fangs? I mean, what you know, it was really scary. And so I got out to Australia, and all of a sudden I was talking to the press all the time. And I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. It's very flattering when people come and talk and ask you about your book. And so I really enjoyed it and liked the time. And there was one day where I spoke to 3 different radio stations. One day. I was on a panel the same day with other authors. I went to some party the same day with other authors. I'm shaking everybody's hands and the radio shows and everything. This was great. I have to confess, I was thinking, I kind of like this. I think, you know, I can deal with fame. You know, little did I know. But I'm really enjoying this. And you know, that day, just to add a little extra background, I was on the phone with Radio Brisbane, which is kind of cool, Radio New Zealand. I mean, you can still find that radio interview on the web. It was really neat stuff. Now, there was only one other thing, is that Top Producer appeared in Australia September 1, and it debuted in the United States September 15, because I have an Australian publisher and I have a U.S. publisher. So what happened is that my U.S. publicist, this is kind of cool, you know, I can deal with, you know, publicists. My U.S. publicist arranged for me to speak with Buddy Cianci out of Providence on the evening on September 10th, and I wanted to speak to him because my book was coming out in the United States a week later. Now, Buddy Cianci he's a hoot. I mean, the guy runs a radio show. He's the ex-mayor of Providence. He's coming out with a book through St. Martin's, my publisher. I encourage you to read it because he's I mean, the stuff that's gone on, you can't make up. It's really interesting. But one problem. He's in Providence, and I'm in Brisbane, okay? So I had to get up at 2 a.m. in the morning after this big day, 3 radio appearances already, at the parties and everything, and I just knew that I would sleep. I would just sleep through this 2 a.m. appearance. So here's where the prop comes in. I set my BlackBerry to 1 a.m., so I had an hour to wake up and get ready. I set the BlackBerry. I set the alarm next to my bed for 1 a.m., and when the receptionist called at 1 a.m., it sounded like there was a fire in the neighborhood with all these ringtones going off. So I got out of bed, and I was a wreck. I was a total wreck. I mean, I had bedhead, I had deep circles under my eyes, I was really groggy because we'd been out every night with our good buddies from 25 years ago. We lived in Australia for 3 years, 25 years ago. So we're out with all of our buddies, and you know, I was a wreck this night. I really needed to sleep. And it's 1 a.m., and I'm in these nasty old pajamas. This part of my wardrobe dates back to last century, literally. I'm not exaggerating here. And so what I did is I pulled on these shorts, but I left these flannel pajama tops on, and I got my BlackBerry and went downstairs, and so I'm sitting on a park bench in front of the hotel trying to wake up thinking I'm safe even as a celebrity because nobody will see me at 1 a.m. in the morning in Brisbane. And so I'm reading my emails, and going back and forth and going through them. And in the distance, three people, three Aussies start to approach me, one woman and two guys. And they're walking toward me. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, I just don't want to be seen like this, you know, the bedhead and everything. And the woman, don't mind if I point at you, Eric, I'm just using you as a prop here. So the woman points at me, and I think, oh no, they're going to ask me for my autograph. And you know, it's 1 a.m., it's 1:30, you know, come on. And they're walking closer and closer, and she says, look, he's homeless. and so, you know, I looked around, and no, they mean me. They're talking about me. And so all of these delusions about celebrity and everything, they're gone, just totally gone, out the window. And she was relentless. She said, do you think he needs money? And I'm just like crushed here. And I think I probably looked the way a deer looks when it sees headlights. And I was going, no. And she said, it's okay. He has a BlackBerry. So that was my first experience as being an author, and you know, it's very much a career and a business where you have to get out and talk to people. And I try to do that all the time. So if you have a big book club in the area, and I love to come to those things. So you know, I'm always out speaking to people. And what I find is that you actually, when you talk to people, you learn a little bit about what people like, and it makes you better at your craft. Because I'm a real believer that you tell your stories to people before you write them down. You see what people like when you just verbally communicate, and you know, that helps you as far as your writing. So I love getting out and touring and talking to people. I'm glad to be here at the library tonight. And with that, I'd love to entertain questions.
Yeah, I was just curious about that process that you went through to be able to write, to get, you know, what was that process like? Did you know, how did you find someone who was willing to publish a book?
So is the question, how did I get published, or how did I write?
Well, like the publishing, you know, everybody has a story to tell, and you know, what's that process of, or how did you make that happen?
Okay, well, it's different for fiction and nonfiction. All right, let me explain a little bit about what happens in fiction. And the first thing that you have to do is to find an agent. Okay, and what an agent does is he or she will take your book and market it to publishers. And publishers know their agents. The publishers know agents as a form of quality control. They have long-standing relationships, and it's very hard to get to a publisher without an agent. So how does somebody find, unless of course you're Sarah Palin, in which case the publishers will come find you, Barack Obama. I mean, if the president can write a book, well, or he can get some ghostwriters to write a book for him, the publishers will come and pitch their ideas. But if you're Norb, no, it's you have to go out and get an agent. There are several ways to get an agent. One way is that you send out query letters, which is, Dear so-and-so, I know of you through X, Y, and Z. I've just written the best book in the world for the following reasons, A, B, and C. And you have to be charming and engaging and a little self-deprecating, but at the same time really salesy. And it's a skill to write great query letters. And you send out 1,000 of them. And the thing is you have to send them out, and typically you don't hear from people. When you do hear, it's typically no. But every once in a while, you hit. And if you don't hit, it doesn't mean that you haven't written a good book. It may mean that somebody's hung over the minute that your letter gets there. Because think about what my agent goes through. He's phenomenal. He's one of the hardest working people I know. He gets 2,000 query letters a month. Right? Now think about that. Think about going through 2,000 letters from people who really care, who have great hopes invested in this letter. And you just go through, no, maybe, hell no. I mean, you know, so that's one way you find an agent. Another way to find an agent is to go through a speed dating process. So what do I mean by speed dating? There's this festival every year called Thriller Fest. I encourage you to come to it. Just Google it and it'll come up. You'll find me. And you'll find some real titans among the literary community. And so what occurs at Thriller Fest is you get all these authors, and you get want-to-be authors, and you get readers, and they come and they all talk about books and the craft. And there are like 3 days of drinking, eating, and talking and reading, and it's great. It's fun stuff, particularly if you're a writer, because you can learn from the other writers. Particularly if you want to be published, because you can learn from people who have been published. And one of the things that they have is an agent fest. And so Agent Fest is it's a subset of Thriller Fest. And it occurs in a room about this size in the Grand Hyatt without the slope. And there are probably 8 tables around the room. And behind each table is an agent. That's good news. And there's a person, and in front of each table are probably 20 people standing in line, which is bad news. And we had this guy in college that used to moderate tests in a big hall. We called them Mr. Test. And so you have the functional equivalent of Mr. Test with a little bell, one of those ringers at like a front desk, at a reception desk. Mr. Test will hit the bell, and you walk up and you pitch your book for 2 minutes to this agent. And if the agent likes you, then the agent will say, leave your card. Bing, next person up. 2 minutes, you pitch your book, bing. Now, that's how the agent sees it. But if you're there pitching, you see it as, I wait in line for 20 minutes, or however long it is, to pitch a book for 2 minutes, and then I go and wait in line 20 more minutes. Okay? It's really grueling. But people do it. They do it, and they're successful. And you know what? It's actually really good. I really admire people who find their agents that way, because they get really good at talking about their book and their story. And that's something that you have to do whenever you get in front of the TV shows or the radio shows, whatever. So the final thing is that you can find agents the old-fashioned way and network. I was a stockbroker for 20 years. I networked. And so that's how I found my agent. So.
Yeah, somehow I thought that you maybe had an idea to be fleshed out that you pitched, and then they said go ahead with it, but you of course had a whole manuscript, a book written, and then sent it to them.
Well, yes and no. I did a lot of things wrong. But somehow it all worked out. I started networking before I'd finished the book, and if Scott were here this evening, he would tell the story very differently. Here's how I tell the story. So I met this fellow named Scott Hoffman of Folio Literary Management, who's the hardest working human I know. He's a great agent, and it was one of the greatest nights of my life, because we talked about literature and we talked about books. And he said, "You have a really interesting story, stick with it. You know, I really want to stay in touch." And so I left that evening on a high. And Scott would say, "Hey, you know, met Norb, great guy, had a lot of fun." And boy, was I disappointed when we parted. Because what happened is I'd written 60 pages at that time. And think back to the agents who are going through the 2,000 query letters a month. They don't have time to hear a partially evolved plot. They just don't have the time. And so if you're writing fiction, you want to have your book written before you try to find an agent. But I didn't, so every rule is made to be broken. What I did is Scott and I went out once a quarter, and by the end of a couple of quarters, a few quarters, I'd finished the book, and he read it, and then he had some suggested edits, which I did, and then in October of 2007, I think it was, he pitched the book to a bunch of publishers, and St. Martin's made the best offer, so that's why we went with them. Yeah, it's different for nonfiction. If you have a big career and you're a recognized celebrity of some kind or you're an authority within your field, then what can happen is that you end up as a celebrity or as an authority in the field, you create a treatment for your nonfiction topic, and your agent will market that treatment to the big houses, and then you have a period of time to write your book.
What does that mean, a treatment?
Well, I haven't actually seen one, so I'm using a buzzword where I have no direct experience. But I think a treatment would be, this is what I want to cover in the book. These are the chapters. Chapter 1 explores this. Chapter 2 explores that. I think that the most successful treatments are actually pretty long. I think they range between 30 and 70 pages. But I haven't seen one because I've focused on fiction.
I have two questions. One, if you could tell us a little bit about your next book. I know you've worked on or written a second book so far. And then my other question is, how did your interview go at 2 o'clock in the morning?
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take them in reverse order. I had a blast speaking with Buddy. I mean, he was fun. I mean, and the problem is that you just can't go back to sleep afterwards, because you get on the radio and it's all about energy. If you don't have a lot of energy, then you're flat. And so,
Time in prison?
pardon me?
Didn't Buddy spend some time in prison?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Now I may not. Yeah. So I've got to get his book, because the urban legend we have a house in Narragansett. The urban legend in Rhode Island is that he in a marriage, his wife was having an affair. He found out about it. He took a baseball bat, went over and beat the guy, went to prison, came out of prison, and as a consequence of that time inside, he had to find a job in Mayor of Providence, Well, that's sort of the way they tell Rhode Island, tongue-in-cheek. But that was he spent time in there. It's like this urban legend. And then more recently, there was a scandal that involved a lot of kickbacks in Providence. He went into prison. Now he's running a talk show. But look, I'm not on top of all the specifics of it, but I have to say the city improved enormously enormously while he was a mayor. I have no idea. I have no idea about the specifics of the kickbacks. All I know is that Providence in 1993, when we first moved there and had a home in Narragansett, it was kind of dumpy. But through the years, it has gone through total renaissance, and he was driving that. So kickbacks, I don't know. He was taking care of business too, in a good way. So the interview with him was fun. We had a great time together. He's really charming. He's a very charismatic guy, and he's a normal guy. It's like you can speak with some folks, and you get the talking head voice. Well, we have here Norb Vonnegut from author of top. He's a normal guy. You know, he doesn't have the talking head, the CNBC voice. I mean, he's just a good guy. So it was a lot of fun that evening. In my second book, it's the working title is called The Fund, and it's about this fellow who his world is crashing around him right at the start. His hedge fund has blown up in 2007. He finds that his wife is 3 months pregnant. He desperately needs a job. The bank is foreclosing on his home in April of 2008. He desperately needs a job. And so he goes to work for a hedge fund in Greenwich. And the hedge fund has never lost money. And they pay him so that his troubles are temporarily at bay. And he thinks that his life has changed for the better. But in fact, he stepped out of the frying pan into the fire because he finds that both he and his, let me just say, his life turns bad. And the way the hedge fund is making money would make Bernie Madoff look like a saint. And it has nothing to do with Ponzi schemes or any of that stuff. So that's the story. It has a finance background, but not much finance in the book. It's all about people and relationships. And I'm really enjoying this book, writing it and editing now, which is where I am. I finished the first draft September 1. I basically have been touring the country, the world, for September, October, a lot of November, and so now I'm just focusing on putting through edits. I'll probably be finished around March, unless my editor tells me to finish sooner.
Do you have any advice for aspiring authors, writers?
Mm-hmm. Lots of advice. All right. So, number one, write the book, because no matter what I tell you, you know, I can tell you anything about the pain and all that. All the advice in the world that you get won't replace writing the book. So you write the book. All right. So that's write the book. That's number one. It's that simple. Write the book. Number two is, while you're writing the book, don't tell anybody that you're writing the book. I'll tell you how. And the reason for that is that the first bit of criticism that you get is an excuse to stop writing, right? If you say, oh, I'm writing a book, what does anybody care? I mean, nobody cares that you're writing a book. They don't care. Everybody says they're writing a book. Nobody cares until it's done, right? So don't tell anybody. You know what? I didn't tell my wife. Okay? And let me tell you what happened on this. I didn't tell her. So she calls me this hermit with a laptop. And so I would disappear into my office, right? For hours. And I would get up early in the morning. for hours. I got up at 5 and I wrote until 7 every day. Okay, huh? And nobody wants to get up at 5. I mean, I don't wake up until 11 a.m. every morning. I sure don't want to be up at 5. So one day I was working out in our basement. We have an exercise machine downstairs, and so I'm working out. It's I think it's a Saturday or so, and I went downstairs working out. So my wife Mary sneaked into my office with a flash drive and stole my book. She went in and she saw this folder that says book. Oh, well, this looks interesting. So she put book onto the flash drive, and I had no clue. Okay. The next day, it's Sunday, right? And I heard Mary laughing. And she's just laughing. She was laughing her head off. And I thought, oh, she must be having a conversation with one of her buddies. So I didn't say anything. Laughing. Oh, well, that's a good sound. So I didn't, I'm just like working away. And we had dinner that night. And after dinner, kids disappeared and to do their homework. And Mary says, I have a confession to make. And I'm thinking, oh, man. Those words, nobody ever wants to hear that. I mean, nothing good ever follows. I have a confession to make. What is that, 6 words, 7 words? Nothing good ever comes from that line. Never. And so I said, okay. And, all this time, she was thinking I'd disappeared like internet porn or something. She had no idea. She said, I stole your book, and I love it. And it made me very happy. But she reads a lot, very harsh critic, and so I knew I'd passed a test, and she wasn't saying that just for me, because think about it from her perspective, like a little bit of self-defense, because if I were writing a book and it was trash, how do you tell your husband this, who's getting up at 5 in the morning, writing till 7? So write your book, don't tell anybody about it. And then here's a final thing, tell everybody. Right? Now what kind of ridiculous advice is this? I think that you need to try your material out on people. I think that you need to tell stories. And so I'll tell you a story and tell me what you think about this. I'm thinking about blogging on this story. And I haven't decided whether or not to write this or not. But, so I write nonfiction, and I have this blog that I call Acrimony. And what I do is I take a headline from usually the New York Times, but often the Wall Street Journal, and I'll start writing about stuff. So I've written a lot about Madoff. I've written a lot about Gallan. And I've written in recent days a lot about Goldman Sachs and the bonuses and all this stuff. And so I'm thinking that I'm going to pull out a headline about the airline industry. Frankly, I don't care what the article is, because I want to tell the story, and I can't fit the story into a book because it's always kind of an outlier. But the story is this. When I was flying, I always was flying coach. Even though I flew a lot, always on, and this is as a financial advisor, all of my organization, I mean, I wasn't at the private jet league. I was a top producer. I was a stockbroker, and so I flew a lot, but not in the private jets, and I never accumulated enough to upgrade, or if I did accumulate those seats, I always saved them for family time so that we could take our vacations and go wherever and not worry about the price. So one of the things that always got me is, you know how when you get to the airport and it's always rushed and you're delighted to get into your seat, and you think that you're going to read or work on your 5-hour flight out to California. Invariably, there will be some humongous human being, humongous, who will sit in the seat in front of you. and lean back all the way. So you know, it's like your computer is up here, your computer is up there, or like you're eating a book or something. And one day I was on this flight, and there was this guy who must have been 6'5", and his head lopped over, and I've had enough of this. I'm going to get even. I'm going to figure out some way. So I'm thinking about this the whole time, and I've got this my computer, and I'm just mad as hell the whole time. So I finally had it. Got to California, went to the hardware store, and I bought 2 seat clamps. All right. So do you know what a seat clamp is? It's one of these. There are these little clamps. They're like this, and there's a C. Okay. So I need props here. Okay. Let me think. Yeah. Let me get a book. That's actually pretty. This is not a veiled sales pitch or something. This is actually. I can get 2 books. This is a prop. All right. So what I did is this. I got these clamps, and they're really like small. Okay. So sure enough, the next flight on the way back from California, it is all set to be uncomfortable. I mean, it wasn't the same fellow, but it was set up to be uncomfortable. And as soon as we got in the air, I dropped this isn't quite right. I don't know how to explain the physics of this quite, or but I dropped the table. All right, I dropped the table down, and the table has these 2 rails. Okay, that's right. The table has 2 rails. And what I did with these C clamps is I put one on the rail over here, and I put one on the rail over here. And so the benefit of that is that the guy in front of me couldn't lean back. And this worked like a charm. This was wonderful. And I'm thinking about going public with this technique on my blog. But I haven't decided. So I'm glad to see you laughing, because I think you convinced me to do this. And so that's why I say, try out your stuff on your people. Yeah, I mean, don't tell anybody you're writing a book, but you can take little scenes, and if you want to know whether the scene works or not, think about try that. So that's my advice. Those 3 bits.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
2 things. First, how do your former stockbroker friend, how do people react to your books? This first book, how have they reacted to it?
They're reacting to the book really well, and the reason is think about this. The question I asked earlier is, when's the last time anybody liked a stockbroker, right? All right, it's really easy to pile on financial services right now. It's really easy. The bonuses, the catastrophe, the leverage, the bad behavior, the Bernie Madoffs. Everybody's bad. Well, that's not the case. It's totally not the case. There are lots of really good people on Wall Street, and they work hard and they try to do the right thing. Okay? And I worked with a lot of them, and I really cared about the people I worked with, and I cared about my clients. I tried to do the right thing. And I think that is mostly Wall Street. Okay? The things that get people's attention, however, are the Madoffs or bonuses. Now, the bonuses, I have real problems with that. All right, that doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't mean the people are bad. Everybody tries to do the right thing. And what I have in Grover work is a guy that you care about. And my friends from Wall Street like that, because they see there's a good guy who can speak, who can be a nice face in the industry. And the story of Grover Rourke is a story we can all relate to. He's a guy who's going through his life, he's trying to do the right thing, he's opinionated, he's brash, he's an underdog, right? But at the end of the day, his world blows up around him for reasons that he has no control over. And I think all of us can relate to that story. Things happen to people. You don't have control. Things go wrong. And you go through and you try to fix them. That's a story that I like in literature, no matter where it is, on Wall Street, if it's a police story. I like stories like that. That's probably why I liked Alfred Hitchcock movies so much. I mean, think about North by Northwest. The ad agent, ad salesman, the ad guy, he's out there and he's mistaken identity and his world turns bad overnight. They want to throw him in prison and he sorts it out. I love those stories. And so Grove's liked wide and far, and my buddies on Wall Street like that. And I've taken a few pot shots at Goldman, but they're the gold standard. They're really good at what they do. So.
And the other question is, I have a very good friend who is writing a book, a novel, and this young friend, and she's always researching. She reads other books to research, and I always think that you have such a spontaneity. She's a great storyteller, and I'm not a writer, or I'm not trying to be. I'm not writing, but is researching by reading other books, is that for her to develop her style? I mean, I just am curious about that. Why does she need to research when she's just so spontaneous, such a great storyteller verbally? Does that make any sense? I don't know.
No, I understand.
Since this would be her first book, and she's kind of stopped, and it seems like now she's doing a lot of research. But she's very private about not showing her work. So I don't know how to help her. I mean, I stay back and I just say, I don't ask her too much about the book.
How long has she been working on it?
2 years.
Yeah.
So.
What happens, or what I encourage people to do is just barf it out and get it on paper.
Yeah, I like this way.
Yeah, barf it out, get it on paper, and then go back and tweak. Okay, now one of the things that occurs at Thriller Fest is you get lots and lots of questions about, do you outline? Do you create outlines? Do you just sit down and try to be brilliant? Now, I have to tell you that the process of outlining a story, to me, is an experience exactly. It's like fingernails down the chalkboard, all right? Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about that is bad, right? That's how it feels. However, I always know where I'm going to finish, okay? On my first book, I had a 2-page outline. I knew where I was going to finish. On my second book, I had a 40-page outline. I knew where I was going to finish. If you listen to folks like Jeffrey Deaver, they will, hey, I outline, I know everything that's going to happen. It takes me 3 months to put together an outline. By the time the 3 months are done, I know it. The book is basically done. I get a book out a year. All right, he's good. I'm coming around to that way because I'm spending a lot of time rewriting. But I kind of like that in that I don't think that, or I think that creativity doesn't come with an on-off switch. It's really hard to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write this outline and be creative, particularly if you hate the process, right? I mean, it's like I hate tomatoes. You sit down and like, you will eat tomatoes and enjoy them. Now, come on, it's hard. So what I would say that your friend probably should do is finish a story and then go back. And if you research through other writers and things, that's fine. I think that there's a lot that you can learn from writers. I mean, I think writers are born readers. So I think that's important. And I also think that there's so many talented folks out there, you can't help but learn from their craft. mean, I love James Lee Burke. I think he's a fabulous writer. And nobody can write a Louisiana dialect better than he can. Love Carl Hyacin. His characters from books like Double Whammy, Tour Season, Striptease, fantastic. I've recently reread all of the Hemingway stuff. You know, some of the stuff that he wrote in A Movable Feast, I couldn't believe what he was writing about F. Scott Fitzgerald. I thought he was kind of cruel, frankly. And I'd forgotten about that. I thought what he wrote was really cruel. But you learn from writers. I'm reading stuff by Joe Finder right now, and I think he's really great for his very simple sentences. I watch them, and you know, you can read stuff and see how writers deal with making their characters likable. So Jim Rollins, for example, is a writer. He's written a lot of the screenplays for the Indiana Jones movies, and comes out with books and things, all thrillers. And he has this great shtick at Thriller Fest where he stands up and he says, 7 ways that you can make your characters likable, and goes through them. He says, 1, they can be really smart. They've got to be really smart. They have to be really funny. They have to like dogs. Yeah. Everybody likes somebody who likes dogs. Yeah. And then something really bad has to happen to him. And this is where he stops before he gets to the end of the 7. So he then says, I don't want you to have somebody saying really brilliant stuff who's very funny, walking a dog who's like hit by a Mack truck in the middle of the highway. That's not what I'm trying to get at. But my point is that you can learn a lot from other writers, because there are a lot of people who sit around and they think about the craft. And they think about it because it is a craft, and telling a story can, some people are natural storytellers, but I think everybody can improve their storytelling just by focusing on what goes into a good story. One more, we wrap it up? One more.
I was going to say, do you think that people will, just your opinion of the Kindle, do you think that people will, like, I don't know that I can at this point, you know, I love a good book and the feel of the paper and the whole thing. I can't really, you know, warm up to the Kindle yet, but I just wondered what your, or that type of media, you know, what your opinion is on that. Do you think readers are ready for that yet, or is that still a work in progress?
I have to say that I believe the Kindles are going to take over the world. Just this drumbeat, and you can see it coming. I have a Kindle, okay? What do I think about Kindles? I don't know if I like Kindles or not, because frankly, I don't, as an author, I don't get as much revenue from it. All right. So I don't mean to be commercial in that sense, but it's an issue. It's an issue. The economics, I hope they change or develop a little bit. What I think, though, is this. If you look at my kids, they don't read the newspapers. They read, they go to online for sites, or they go to blogs. Like my daughter goes to Perez Hilton for all of her news every day. I'm really concerned about that. But the point I'm making is that you have a lot of the next generation that's accustomed to reading on the screen. Reading on a Kindle is wonderful. It's wonderful because, you know what? I can read without my glasses because I can make the text really big. Or if I want to turn on the sound, they have a pretty good robotic voice. It's not all that robotic, it's pretty good. I get the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal on my Kindle. I like that, okay? There's nothing like the feel of paper. There's the texture. There's nothing like a book. I wouldn't like my Kindle. I was thinking about this the other day. I wouldn't like my Kindle if I didn't have this cover. I have this leather cover, all right? There's something about opening it up. But Kindle, you know, a Kindle's just this flat pad. But if I didn't open it up like a book, I wouldn't like it very much. There's something that is warming to me about that feeling of opening it up. I don't think they're going away. I think that, you know, we have to figure out how to, we as authors have to figure out how to live with them. And the flip side of it is I don't think paperback or hardback books are going away for a long time, for a long, long time. I suspect that school textbooks and things will go away really soon as the technology gets better. So.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I just wondered also as an author if you felt like the voice of your novel comes through the Kindle, or, you know, I guess it's, you know, it's almost like reading a book or watching a movie, I guess, to me, but, or you know, if that, you know, projects the same way.
Well, you know, in all honesty, I'm a huge lover of audio cassettes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I love that. I don't like abridged audio cassettes. Unabridged, insist on them. I love it, and I really enjoy books that way. So I have great tolerance for a lot of different media, Kindle, audio, you name it. And I know there are lots of folks that take issue with the audio versions because you're really dependent on the narrator. And I think that's right. If you have a bad narrator, it's not a great experience. So, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me tonight. You're great to come out. Thank you.